Adam Smith was born on June 5, 1723 in Kirkcaldy, Fife, Scotland. His father, also named Adam Smith, was a lawyer, a military judge in Scotland, and the inspector of customs in the Kirkcaldy area. His father, also named Adam Smith, was a lawyer, a military judge in Scotland, and the inspector of customs in the Kirkcaldy area. This father of economics is full of contradictions. He was gifted, studying at the University of Glasgow at the age of 14, entering Oxford University at the age of 17, and becoming a full professor at his alma mater, the University of Glasgow, at the age of 25. But at the same time, he was known as a fool. He often daydreamed when reading, was too lazy to reply to friends' letters, and never married or had children. He left behind only 2 works. The Wealth of Nations is regarded as the pioneering work of modern economics, while the Theory of Moral Sentiments is regarded as a classic of ethics. Adam Smith, known as the father of modern economics, has a profound impact on global economic thinking through his theories. Land, labor, and capital are the 3 major factors of production. Smith identified the 3 major factors of production: land, labor, and capital. This view provides important guidance for our understanding of the basis of economic activities and resource allocation. Adam Smith is famous for his famous invisible hand theory. He believed that the operation of the market economy does not depend on the kindness or benevolence of people, but is based on the selfish interests of human beings. Adam Smith pointed out that human beings need help from others almost all the time, but they cannot rely solely on the kindness and charity of others. Instead, people tend to be driven by their own interests to expect others to meet their needs. This is the essence of a trade. You provide me with something I need, and I provide you with something you need. This mutually beneficial exchange is at the heart of a market economy. Adam Smith's famous saying embodies his profound wisdom throughout his life and is not only of great significance to economic research. At the same time, it can also trigger resonance and discussion in our daily lives. These famous quotes remind us to pay attention to economic laws and understand the nature of market mechanisms, thereby guiding us to move forward more wisely on the road to wealth creation. Today we discuss and learn from Adam Smith's wisdom. With long-term reading and in-depth thinking, we will definitely be one step closer to wealth. Let's take a look at where the money comes from and where it goes. Land, labor, and capital are the 3 major factors of production. Our sympathy for others often depends on how similar we are to them. The reasons for the decrease in profits are, firstly, competition, and secondly, excess capital. Supply and demand in the market determine the price of goods, not the cost to producers. Interest is the time value of capital, reflecting the difference in value of funds at different points in time. Interest is the natural return of capital and reflects the scarcity of capital. Wealth comes not only from productive activities, but also from the use of natural resources and land. The production and distribution of wealth depends on the use of labor, capital, and land. Increased wealth leads to rising wages, but not necessarily to rising profits. The growth of wealth depends on the improvement of labor productivity, not the abundance of resources. The growth of wealth depends on labor productivity, which in turn is affected by technological innovation and the institutional environment. Savings and investment are important driving forces of economic growth and can promote capital accumulation. The deepening of division of labor and specialization depends on the expansion of market size. Division of labor is the key to improving labor productivity. Wages, profits, and land rent are the three fundamental sources of all income and all exchangeable value. Wage levels are affected by supply and demand in the labor market and workers' bargaining power, not by employer generosity. The value of money lies in its purchasing power, not its metallic content. When individuals pursue their own interests, they will inadvertently promote the overall interests of society. The function of currency is to serve as a medium of exchange and a measure of value to facilitate transactions. The price mechanism can coordinate the relationship between supply and demand and achieve effective allocation of resources. The velocity of money affects the activity of the economy. Value is created by labor, not by the material itself. Frugality can increase wealth for a private individual, but can lead to poverty for a country. Money is a medium of exchange and a measure of value. Economic development is a long-term process that requires patience and stable policies. Value is determined not by the item itself, but by the price the buyer is willing to pay. Economic development depends on the improvement of the system and the protection of the rule of law. The basis of economic prosperity lies in the deepening of division of labor and specialization. The driving force for economic growth comes from capital accumulation and investment. The source of economic growth lies in innovation, investment, and education, and these factors interact and promote each other. Every man, so long as he does not violate the laws of justice, should be allowed to pursue his own interests in his own way. The value of labor lies in the utility of the items it produces, not in the labor itself. The improvement of labor productivity relies on education and training to improve the quality of human capital. Labor is the source of wealth, and capital is the power of labor. Profit is the driving force of corporate activities and the source of investment. Everyone knows and cares about his own interests better than anyone else. Everyone has natural self-interest, which is the driving force behind economic development. Interest rates are a reflection of capital supply and demand, as well as compensation for risk and time value. Everyone tries to use his capital to get the maximum value for his products. The price each man is willing to pay for each article depends on the quantity of his goods. People are willing to exchange the products of their labor because they believe that others will pay for it. The degree of competition in the market determines the quality and price of goods. The superiority of the market economy lies in its ability to spontaneously coordinate the interests of individuals and society. The spontaneity of the market economy will lead to efficient allocation of resources, but it may also produce market failures. The rent of land is the landowner's income and reflects the scarcity and productivity of the land. The value of land lies not in its natural attributes, but in the income it can generate. Consumption is the ultimate goal of production, and production should be oriented to meet consumer demand. Consumption is the sole purpose of all production, and the interests of producers can only be realized when the needs of consumers are met. The prosperity of a country depends on the perfection of its legal system. The higher the cultural level of a country, the higher the moral level and quality of life of its citizens. The market price of a commodity will naturally distribute it among the various uses to which it is desired. Government spending should be subject to strict budget constraints to avoid fiscal crises. Government tax policies will affect individual economic behavior and social welfare distribution. The natural flow of capital is where the highest profit rates are pursued. Free competition can promote the survival of the fittest among enterprises and promote the dynamic development of the economy. Free competition is the cornerstone of the market economy and can promote innovation and efficiency. Free competition is the most effective means to promote economic growth. When we evaluate anything, we are affected by our own emotions. Compassion is a part of human nature that enables us to share our joys and sorrows with others. Our compassion is not limited to humans, but also includes care and compassion for other living creatures. Our empathy increases when we put ourselves in another person's shoes and imagine what they are feeling. Our evaluation of others is often based on our own emotional reactions. Lack of empathy is one of the important causes of alienation and estrangement between people. We tend to feel empathy more easily for those with whom we have a close relationship. When we evaluate the actions of others, we must consider not only their motivations and intentions, but also their emotions and emotional states, as these are important factors in our empathy. Never ask for mercy from others, but appeal to their self-interest. Never talk to others about your own needs, but only talk about what is good for them. Human nature is to pursue personal interests. Exchange tends to be motivated by self-interest and gives rise to a division of labor. Everyone is constantly striving to find the most beneficial use for the capital at his disposal. Of course, he was thinking about his own interests. Vanity is always based on our belief that we are noticed and praised by others. Monarchs all over the world are greedy and selfish. They deceive their subjects and gradually reduce the true weight of the metal originally contained in the currency. In competition, personal ambition often promotes the public interest. The basis of class distinctions and social order is based on people's tendency to sympathize with and echo the feelings of the rich and powerful. What is a good economic system? A good economic system is one that encourages everyone to create wealth. The wealth of a country does not lie in the amount of currency, but in the abundance of daily necessities. The discovery of America and the opening of the route to the East Indies via the Cape of Good Hope are the two greatest and most important events in human history. We do not get our dinner by the good deeds of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker, but by the value they place on their own interests. Although marriage is encouraged in China, it is not because having children brings them blessings, but because they have the freedom to give birth to and kill their children. Corn is a necessity, silver is only superfluous. Poverty will undoubtedly make people not want to get married, but it will not necessarily make people not get married. Businessmen do not need to complain about the decrease in profits, thinking that this is the decline of business. The decrease in profits is the natural result of business prosperity. If the development results of a society cannot fully flow into the hands of the public, then it will be morally unpopular and risky because it is destined to threaten social stability. Monopolists, by constantly keeping the market stocked short, sell their products at prices well above normal, thus increasing their remuneration both in terms of wages and in terms of profits. The income of workers, or the quality of life, depends on the growth rate of social production rather than the absolute level. In ancient China, although it was rich in products, its development had been stagnant for a long time. So the situation of lower-class workers was extremely miserable. To worry about others rather than ourselves, to limit our selfishness, and to show our charitable feelings constitute the natural perfection of human nature. Things with great use value often have little or no exchange value. Conversely, things with great exchange value often have little or no use value. Man is by nature, and always will be, a selfish animal. Resentment is given to us by a defensive nature, and only for self-defense. It upholds justice and protects the innocent. Whether a person is rich or poor depends on the amount and quality of daily necessities, conveniences, and entertainment that he can enjoy. In the market economy, there is an invisible hand that causes you to create greater value for others when you pursue your own interest than when you subjectively think about contributing to society. This is the wonder of market economy. The secret of education is to direct vanity toward its proper ends. There are few things more useful than water, but the goods that can be exchanged for it are very limited, and very few things can be exchanged for water. In contrast, diamonds have little use, but can be exchanged for large amounts of goods. The prosperity of a nation depends on the liberty, justice, and independent spirit of its citizens. The most fundamental quality in human nature is compassion. We cannot expect to receive from others what we are not willing to give. A wise government should minimize its intervention in the market and let the market reach equilibrium spontaneously. The wealth of a country depends not on the quantity of its gold and silver deposits, but on the productivity of its people. The real wealth of a country lies in the productive capacity of its land, labor, and capital, not in its reserves of gold and silver. For every extremely wealthy person, there are at least 500 poor people. The wealth of a few is based on the poverty of the majority. For most people, wealth is mainly used to show off. People in the same business rarely meet together except to conspire against the public or to raise prices. A society in which by far the majority of its members are impoverished will not be a prosperous and happy society. When a person has made achievements and received great rewards, he not only cares about the absolute amount of his own rewards, but also cares about the relative amount of his own rewards. Therefore, he has to make various comparisons to determine whether the remuneration he receives is reasonable. The results of the comparison will directly affect his enthusiasm for future work.